Welcome to my YouTube channel Heart of Guidance. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Allah Almighty says, have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the army of the elephant? Did he not thwart their plan? He sent against them birds and flocks, striking them with stones of baked clay and made them like Eden straw. Allah in the very first verse of Surah Fat says, all praise is for Allah, the Lord of all worlds. Surah Fat is also known as the key of the Quran, and the very first verse of this key talks about multiple worlds. I started this series to explore the other worlds and their interaction with our reality in the light of the Quran. In this chapter we will talk about the event that happened almost 40 years before the birth of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Let's start. Most of us have probably heard of Abraha, the guy who intended to use an army of elephants to destroy the Kaaba. However, Abraha and his army were decimated by flocks of birds that Allah sent. About these people Allah revealed a whole chapter named Surah Al-Fi. Before diving into discussing parallel dimensions, let's talk about the event that led Abraha to take such a step. Isaac states Abraha later constructed the Alcalay church, and a magnificent structure unlike anything seen on earth at that time. He wrote to the news saying, I have built a church for you the likes of which no other king before you has ever had. I will not rest until I divert the Arabs' pilgrimage to this church. According to Abraha aimed to degrade the people of Yemen through the construction of this imposing church, subjecting them to various forms of humiliation. One such measure was his cruel practice of amputating the hand of any laborer who arrived late to work after dawn. Abraha also transported marble, stone and lavish furnishings from the bulky palace to adorn the church. Inside he installed gold and silver crosses in pulpits crafted from ivory and ebony. The Alcal church was built to an extraordinary height, and its immense size and grandeur were truly awe-inspiring. Ayyanes continued, when the Arabs heard about Abraha's message to the Neos, it sparked widespread anger, particularly among the Kanana tribe. This tribe included intercalators, those who manipulated the sacred calendar in Mecca, postponing sacred months when warfare was prohibited to suit their own purposes. This practice is condemned in the Quran. Postponing the sacred month is only an addition to disbelief. Surah At-Tba. One of these Kenites, deeply enraged by Abraha's intention to divert the Arab pilgrimage away from Mecca to his newly built Alcos church, took action. He secretly traveled to the church and defiled it by defecating inside unseen by anyone. Afterward he returned home without being detected. When news of this reached Abraha, he demanded to know who had committed such an act. He was informed that it was one of the people from Mecca, the city where the Arabs made their pilgrimage. The man had defiled the church in protest after hearing about Abraham's plan to shift the pilgrimage, saying that the church was no good and not worthy enough to instead of the holy Kaaba as a place to worship. Abraha was infuriated by the desecration of the Church of Ales and decreed himself to destroy the Kaaba, and ordered his Abyssinian army to make themselves ready with weapons and for war. After that he, with his elephant, marched towards the location. The news of this upsets the Arab's heavenly duty as he was heading to erase the Kaaba, God's holy edifice. A Yemeni noble named Dunfur summoned his people and other Arabs willing to support him to battle against Abraha and prevent the destruction of the Kaaba. Some responded and they fought against Abraha. Dunfur and his supporters were defeated and he was captured and brought before Abraha facing execution. Dunfur suggested to Abraha that he might be more useful alive than dead. Abraha, showing clemency, decided to keep him prisoner in chains. Abraha continued his campaign and in the region of Katham met Nfiliib Alami with his two ally tribes Shahan and Anis and other Arab supporting tribes. They engaged in battle and Abraha emerged victorious, taking Nuil prisoner. As Abraha was about to execute him, Nuil pleaded for his life, offering to serve as a guide through the Arab territory and guaranteeing the obedience of the tribes under his command. Abraha accepted his offer and released him, continuing his journey with Nuf as his guide. Abraha continued his journey with Nuf as his guide until they reached Thermas bin Mu, and the men of Thif approached him. They addressed Abraha saying, O king, we are your loyal servants, attentive and obedient. We have no quarrel with you, and our temple, which is dedicated to Allah, is not the one you seek. You are after the temple in Mecca, and we shall direct you toward it. With this promise Abraha departed without an increased struggle. The house of Allah in was honored by the populace there, exactly like how the Kaaba is revered in Mecca. They sent Abu Ral to accommodate Abraha toward Mecca, though when they arrived Al-Mamas Abu Ral passed away. The Arabs, enraged over his death, stoned his tomb, and this custom of stoning Abu Ral's grave lived among the inhabitants of Al-Mamas, during which period Abraha stayed at Al-Mugam. He forewent one of his men, an Abyssinian Al-Aswad ibn Maqad, with a cavalry detachment. Al-Aswad was not going alone, instead took along a bag containing stuff of the people of Thamakaray, and among the others including 200 camels of his father Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim was then serving as leader of an elder amongst the Quraysh people. They took umbrage that is Kanana, Hudi, and other tribes who worship the Kaaba first chose to face Abraha, but they changed their minds when they realized that they didn't have enough power to challenge his huge forces. Abraha then sent Hca the Harite to Mecca with a message, seek the leader and the most chivalrous of these people and tell him that the king has no plan to declare war against them. His only reason is to destroy the Kaaba. If they don't confront and fight to stop us from reaching it, there will be no bloodshed. If they do not wish to try and fight, bring their leader to me. Upon arriving in Maya, Hunza asked about the leader of Quraysh, was told, go to Abdul Muttalib Hashim. Hunza met Abba's messenger to him. Abdul Muttalib said, said, by God, we do not desire to come to blows with him, nor is it in our power. This household is God's holy sanctuary and that of his true servant Abraham, peace be upon him. He basically told if God wills to defend it from Abraham, it is because it is his holy house. If he gives Abraha the license to destroy it, then we are helpless to defend it. Hunza then told Abdul Muttalib that he had to go with him to Abraha as per the king's order. Abdul Muttalib left with some of his sons and reached Abba's encampment. There he requested to see Dunayfar, who was a friend of his. Dunayfar was still held in confinement. When they met, Abdul Muttalib asked if Dunfar had any advice or solution for their predicament. Dunfar replied, how can a man offer solutions when he is a king's prisoner facing certain death? I have no counsel to offer except this. Oons the elephant keeper is a friend of mine. I will send him a message strongly recommending you and ask him to seek permission for you to address the king. Speak to him as you see fit and Oons will intercede on your behalf as best he can. Abdul Muttalib agreed to this plan and Dunayfar sent Unai the following message. Abdul Muttalib is the leader of Quraysh and the custodian of the well of Mecca. He feeds both the men in the plains and the wild animals in the mountains. The king has taken 200 of his camels. Please get clearance for him to be taken to the king and plead for him as much as you can. Oons agreed to carry out this request. Oons went to Abraha and said, O king, at your gate seeking audience is the lord of Quraysh and keeper of the well of Mecca. He provides sustenance to both the people of the plains and the wild beasts of the mountains. Allow him to meet with you to discuss an important matter. Abraha granted permission for Abdul Muttalib to enter. Upon his arrival, Abdul Muttalib was strikingly dignified, handsome and impressive. Abraha, moved by his presence, wished to honor him but did not want the Abini to see him sitting next to the throne. Instead, Abraha descended from his throne, sat down on a carpet and had Abd al-Muttalib sit beside him. Abraha instructed his interpreter to inquire about the purpose of his visit. Abdul Muttalib replied, I have come to request the return of the 200 camels you took from me as compensation. Upon hearing this, Abraha instructed his interpreter to respond, you impressed me with your appearance but you disappointed me with your words. You wish to discuss the 200 camels I seized from you but you do not address the building which is the focal point of your religion and your ancestors' legacy that I have come to destroy. Abdul Muttalib responded, I am only concerned with the camels. The building has its own master who will protect it. Abraha retorted, the building's master will not protect it from me. To this Abdul Muttalib said, then the matter is between you and him. Subsequently, Abraha returned the 200 camels to Abdul Muttalib. Upon returning from the meeting with Abraha, Abd al-Muttalib informed the Quraysh that they should retreat to the defensive positions in the mountains. He then approached the Kaaba, grasped its metal door knocker and stood there with a group of Kur's men fervently praying to God for assistance against Abraha and his army. While holding the door knocker, Abd al-Muttalib recited the following verses, God, your worshippers protect their homes, so protect your building. Let not their cross and power vanquish yours. Tomorrow if you should leave them free with our Qibla, then that is what you will. Ibn Hisham confirmed that these verses were deemed genuine. Later Abdul Muttalib published the Kaaba door knocker and with his followers retired to the mountaintops, assuming defensive positions and waiting for the result of Abraha move. The next day Abraha readied himself to invade Mecca, preparing his elephant named Mahmud and arming his soldiers as they instructed. The elephant towards the holy city. Nu'ail ibn Habib approached. He grasped the elephant's ear and said, bow down and then go back to where you came from. You are in God's sacred land. When he released the ear, the elephant complied and knelt according to Allah. This act of kneeling was remarkable since do not naturally kneel, though some elephants have been known to kneel like camels. However, the exact nature of the elephant's actions remains uncertain. Nu'ail ibn Habib then quickly retreated to the mountains. Abraha troops, frustrated by the elephant's refusal to rise, beat it mercilessly, striking its head with axes and embedding hooks into its skin, making it bleed. Despite their best efforts, the elephant remained stubbornly on its knees. When they turned it toward Yemen, it stood and moved quickly. Similarly, it obeyed when turned toward Syria and the east, but whenever the elephant was turned toward Mecca, it knelt again. At this critical moment, God sent a flock of birds from the sea resembling swifts and crows. Each bird carried 3 stones, one in its beak and one in each claw, resembling chickpeas and lentils. The stones rained down upon Abba's troops, and each soldier struck by these stones met his end. And although not all were hit, as the troops retreated in haste along the same road they had traveled, they urgently called for Nfil ibn Habib to lead them back to Yemen. Nfil composed verses reflecting the dire situation where one can flee when God pursueth. Al-Ashram is conquered, not a conqueror. Iak described the chaotic retreat. The troops scrambled down any path available, dying in indiscriminately as they fled. Abraha was severely wounded. His fingers fell off one by one, oozing pus and blood. When they finally brought him to Sah, he was in a pitiful state, like a helpless baby bird. He eventually succumbed when his heart burst from his chest, or so the accounts say. Many early scholars interpreted the term al-ababel to describe birds that moved in flocks, navigating in groups. According to Ian Abbas, these beasts had beaks like birds but paws like dogs. Ikma called them having heads like lions risen from the ocean and said that the color was green. They have also been likened to black seabirds with stones in their beak and claws. Ibn Abbas compared them to the griffins of North Africa, noting that the smallest stones they carried were comparable in size to human heads, with some as big as camels. It is also said that the stones were small, but ultimately the exact nature of these creatures remains known only to God. The descriptions of these birds with beaks like birds, paws resembling dogs, heads like lions, and the ability to carry stones large enough to destroy a massive army clearly suggest that they do not fit the natural laws governing the creatures we see in our world today. This opens the possibility that they could have come from another dimension. The modern science, mainly in theoretical physics, concept of dimensions beyond the four we experience at length with height and time theories like the string theory postulate existence of more dimensions that exist beyond human perception. These dimensions might be inhabited by forms of life and physical laws quite different from those in our universe. In case the birds sent to raise Abraha army originated from such a dimension, it could explain their unusual characteristics: beaks like birds, paws like dogs, and heads like lions, along with their ability to carry enormous stones. In a different dimension, these creatures might not be bound by the gravitational forces, biological constraints, or physical limitations that govern our reality. Their existence could follow different rules, enabling them to perform feats that would otherwise seem impossible in our world, making them capable of actions that defy our understanding of nature. Through the ages, many ancient civilizations have talked about miraculous creatures with incredible power and bizarre hybrid forms that bear an uncanny resemblance to the accounts of the birds that were sent to destroy Abraha's army. In Greek mythology, the griffin was a noble and intimidating creature with the body of a lion and the wings of an eagle. This hybrid form made the griffin both a symbol of power and a guardian of sacred places, much like the birds described in the story of Abraha with lion-like heads and bird-like features. The griffin was believed to be capable of incredible feats, blending the strength of the lion with the agility of the eagle. This combination of animalistic traits rooted in different creatures echoes the descriptions given by early scholars such as Ibn Abbas, who described the birds as having beaks like birds but paws resembling those of dogs, and Baika, who depicted them as having heads like lions. The roc, a legendary bird from Middle Eastern folklore, is another creature whose description aligns with the extraordinary birds in the story of Abraha. The roc was said to be an enormous bird so large that it could carry off elephants and whales in its talons. In some accounts, its wings could block out the sun, symbolizing its sheer power and magnitude. Like the birds in Islamic tradition, the roc was not of this world, having power well in excess of any mere bird. The stones that the birds conveyed to slay Abraha, some as large as a man's or camel's heads, resemble the size and force that is associated with the roc, which, of course, implies a parallelism in the portrayal of divine activity in the form of super creatures borrowed from Mesopotamian myth. The Anu is a creature that has many affinities with the birds which are featured in the Islamic account. Anzu was an enormous lion-headed eagle whose sheer strength and dominion over the skies, like the birds that attacked Abraha army. The Anzu was often depicted as a powerful force capable of unleashing devastation upon its enemies. The hybrid nature of Anzu with its eagle wings and lion-like features once again mirrors the descriptions provided by early scholars, reinforcing the notion that these birds were not ordinary earthly creatures but extraordinary beings with divine purpose. The comparison between the birds sent to destroy Abraha's army and creatures from ancient civilizations such as the griffin, roc, and Anzu helps to illustrate the idea that these birds were not from this world. Their hybrid forms, immense power, and ability to carry massive stones suggest they came from a different realm or dimension where they were equipped with capabilities far beyond what we see in ordinary creatures. These extraordinary beings, like the mythological creatures of old, were instruments of divine will summoned to fulfill a specific purpose in a miraculous and powerful way. In modern scientific terms, we can interpret these as creatures that exist outside the laws of our known physical reality. They may come from dimensions or realms where the natural limitations of our world, such as gravity, biology, and physics, do not apply in the same way. Ian Isaac concluded by reflecting on the significance of this event when God sent Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. One of the divine favors mentioned was his protection of Quraysh by repelling the Abyssinians. This divine intervention is referenced in the Quran. Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the people of the elephant? Did he not make their plan go astray and send against them birds and flocks, striking them with stones of baked clay, making them like eaten straw? See you in the next chapter. Assalamu alaykum.